You know, the only thing that was missing from this film was somebody laying in bed all day playing Animal Crossing. Greetings my fancy viewers, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Eddington, directed by Ari Aster and stars Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal. And I can already tell this is going to be the most controversial film of 2025, because this whole movie revolves around everybody's favorite year, 2020. In the town of Eddington, political conflict is at an all-time high because the election for their new mayor. It's re-elect candidate Ted Garcia, played by Pedro Pascal, up against the sheriff of the town, Joe Cross, played by Joaquin Phoenix. And seeing how this is a film based around 2020 and it's directed by Ari Aster, I'm sure you can already tell how over the top and comedic and absolutely insane this film is gonna be. So before this film even came out, it was getting destroyed by early critics, calling it Ari Aster's worst work he's ever done and an absolute career killer. Now the exact same thing was being said about Beau is Afraid before that film came out. And I think Beau is Afraid is a flawed masterpiece. I love that film so much. It's one of my favorite films that came out that year. So I just sat back and was like, all right, I'm not gonna look at any of the reviews for this film. I'm just gonna observe the movie on my own and give my own opinion. And honestly, I can agree to some extent of why people think this is Ari Aster's worst work. But also, I think this might be Ari's best work at the same time. I hated this movie and at the same time loved it. This film is just a weird anomaly of just so many different antics that it's so hard to describe how this film really works. On one hand, I think this film is a masterpiece in political satire. I think it perfectly executes both sides of the political spectrum. And this film has a really strong yet tough to take in message about how both sides of the political spectrum can over-exaggerate their agendas. But also at the same time, I really do feel like this film has nothing to say. This film pretty much goes over every single aspect of 2020. The election, the pandemic, the conspiracy theories, the George Floyd protests, the social media influencers that just turned into political advocates. Every single thing that happened in 2020 is pretty much brought up in this film. So for those that don't know, I am left-leaning on the political spectrum, so going into this film, I was very nervous seeing how it handled both sides of the political agenda in this film, and especially all the things revolving around the George Floyd protests. That stuff I was very like, okay Ari Aster, be sure you handle this subject matter with respect. And I can appreciate how this film does not really pick a side. It's pretty even on making fun of both sides of the political spectrum to make this film as comedic as possible. And for some, they're gonna love that, and for some, they're gonna absolutely hate it seeing their political side just being made fun of throughout the entire film. And this film really does delve deep into the madness about how politics was at the grasp of everyone's throat throughout the year of 2020. Everywhere you went, you saw either conspiracy theorists or people just trying to protest their rights. Politics was everywhere in 2020. I'm sure each and every single one of you has witnessed somebody that changed as a person in 2020, and this film really does go deep into that. It shows about how someone can easily change into a completely different person because of how crazy 2020 was. For example, Joe Cross, played by Joaquin Phoenix, he starts off as a super nice guy, but he's very anti-mask, and also you can tell he's a bit of a conservative. But you can tell he just wants to make his town a better place. But after all these conspiracy theories occur with COVID and all these other things that are going on with the George Floyd protests, he just becomes this absolute abomination of a right-wing grifter. He becomes just an absolute just cesspool of a human being. I'm sure each and every single one of you has witnessed somebody turn into someone like this, whether it be a family member, a friend, a coworker. 2020 created a lot of crazy people because of all those conspiracy theories, and this film perfectly just executes how crazy 2020 was on the big screen. Just witnessing all these different things occur in this film, I was like, God dang, I feel like I'm living like actually in my town, all the crazy shenanigans that happened because of COVID. And speaking of right-wing grifters, this film makes fun of all of those kinds of people. It makes fun of the anti-vaxxers, the anti-maskers, the conspiracy theorists, all those stupid political podcasts you just saw just come up from just the cesspool of the internet from 2020. This film executes every single aspect of that perfectly. I can definitely tell there's going to be a lot of people, especially on the Republican side of politics, that are just going to be despising this movie, calling this movie too woke for making fun of people that are anti-vax. But the film doesn't just attack the right, it also attacks the left. And this is where people are going to really shut down on this film, because this film focuses on the liberal side of politics with the George Floyd protests. And instead of using this subject matter as a serious tone, it uses it for the comedy of this film. And I know there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to be like, no, this is a serious subject matter, you should treat this with respect, you shouldn't be making fun of this. And at first, I was really thinking that. There were a lot of uncomfortable moments in this film, but it surprisingly really works. You really have to witness how well this film executes this pretty heavy subject matter in such a light-hearted way. It's not attacking the tragedy that happened, but instead attacking those that are theatrical during this tragedy. What I mean by that is those that attended these protests, not really for the social justice reason, but more of those that just wanted to get likes on Instagram by making their profile picture black or posting Instagram stories of them at protests. They didn't care about protesting for the right reason, they just wanted to go out there and get likes on Instagram. And this film really does make fun of all of those kinds of people. I know some people that I used to work with at my old job during 2020 that were exactly like this, and I could just pinpoint every single character in the movie that was like this to somebody that I knew. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be doing that watching this film. You're going to see all these different characters and be like, oh shoot, I know a guy like that, I know a guy like that. Crap, that's my neighbor. Like, you're going to see a lot of people in this film where you're like, man, I feel like I'm just watching like my life in 2020 minus all the crazy shenanigans that happens at the end of the film. Like, this film is just, like, it's literally just a perfect time capsule just representing this crazy year. Trust me when I say that the comedy really does work here. I know it sounds weird that this film is using this tragedy as a comedic tone for the film, but it really does work. This film has a lot of respect for the politics of these peaceful protests that happened, and I feel like this film did a really good job balancing out the comedy and also the intense subject matter. And I can applaud Ari Aster for making a film this controversial and this political and somehow making it work well as a comedy, while at the same time being a crazy Ari Aster film that we all know and love. And that's why this film works so well, is because it's able to turn this absolute just monstrous year that no one wants to remember into something that we can now look back and laugh at. It doesn't make it just a depressing retelling of 2020, but instead a light-hearted comedy with some crazy antics. And with this film, there were so many just out there and laugh out loud jokes in this film that just had me just laughing out loud with the audience. There are so many hilarious moments in this film that is going to make you have tears in your eyes. Like, Ari Aster has been known to do great with horror movies, but people who saw Beau is Afraid know that he can do comedy well, and it's no exception here. This is a political comedic thriller in all the best ways. It's able to balance out these real tough subjects into something that we can now look back and laugh at. And there is one scene in this film that was completely out of pocket that had me just absolutely dying in my seat along with the audience. The best way to describe this movie, I think of it as like someone that is just coked out of their mind trying to explain 2020. That is Eddington for you. There are so many just batshit insane moments in this film that is going to leave your jaw on the floor at the absolute absurdity that is happening. Now, where the film does start to dip for me is with its characters, and that's because there isn't really a solidified character, if that makes sense. Every single character is just a caricature of someone that you probably know. Like, every single character doesn't really have a motivation or goal or an arc in the film. All the characters are just there to just act crazy as like somebody that you knew in 2020. There's not really a character in here that I was really rooting for. I was like watching like just a documentary of just this town going insane because of COVID. And the only character that really has any development is Joe Cross. And just watching him go from this kind of fun-loving sheriff that just wants to make his town better into, like I said, this absolute just monstrous person. He's the only character in the film that really has an arc. And every other character is just used as like a pawn in the movie. For example, Austin Butler is in the film and he plays this over-the-top cult leader, and the film doesn't really do anything with his character. Instead, they just use him as just the example of, oh, people that were conspiracy theorists in 2020. he doesn't really have a character in the film, and he's kind of wasted potential. Same with Emma Stone. Emma Stone is in the film and they barely use her. They just use her as a pawn piece to show as an example of those that were easily fooled by these conspiracy theories. So that's what I mean by there's not really a character in the movie and instead caricatures. Now another fault of the story, or should I say lack thereof, is that there's not really a story at all. I mean, the story of the mayor election between Joe Cross and Ted Garcia is interesting, but the film kind of just pushes that to the side about an hour into the film and forgets about it until the very end. The movie then just focuses on a bunch of different antics about 2020, like the protests and the pandemic and the conspiracy theories and everything. The film doesn't really have a story. Think of it as more of like a parody documentary, I guess, just retelling the events of 2020. There's not really a story here. Like I said, there's a thing with Joe Cross and watching his character go from a nice guy to an absolute insane person. So that, I guess you could say, is the story of watching this one guy just go into complete madness. But the story as a whole isn't really here. And that was a big disappointment. I was hoping for a really engaging story, seeing how this town was affected by this election that is going on, but the film didn't really do anything with that. And the climax of the film is this huge action set piece with Joe Cross just taking down a bunch of people in his town with a giant machine gun. And throughout that whole climax, I was thinking to myself, okay, what's the hook here? What's the real reason why all these things are happening? This is an Ari Aster film, and with his films, you know that the whole first 2/3 of the film are gonna make no sense until the very end. So I was waiting for the very end of the film to have this big twist, I guess. Like maybe, oh, 2020 was created by this tech company that is invading Eddington, or maybe it's just this weird conspiracy theory that's actually happening. But no, the film is just a retelling of 2020. The shootout just ends and then the movie is over with this political message at the end. There's not really a Ari Aster twist, I should say. And that left me a little bit disappointed, but after thinking about it, that's on me. Like, I had the expectations of a twist, hoping different things were gonna happen, but no, the film was just, all right, documentary of 2020. And on the technical aspect of the film, it looks amazing with great cinematography, great visuals, some really great open wide shots of the town that look absolutely stunning. And the sound design is great too, especially in that shootout climax scene. Like, it was just so crazy to hear all these bullets just whiz by you as you're hearing this gun just go all over the place. It's so cool to watch and listen to. Sound design is A+ in this film. This might be Ari Aster's best work when it comes to making a film on the technical aspects. And I was driving home, I had one question on my mind throughout the entire car ride, and that was, is now a good time to make a film like this? With how politically divided we are as a country in America, is now a good time to make a political thriller just attacking both sides of the political spectrum? And, well, personally, I think it works. I do think it's a good time to make a film like this. I think now is a good time to show how crazy 2020 was and how crazy we are as a country right now and how divided we are and how maybe we're not so different. Yeah, there's some extremists out there that we should not even associate with, but maybe there are some different people we should be going up against instead of each other. I think this film is truly a time capsule of 2020 because it perfectly executes every single aspect of that year. But at the same time, that's when I say in the very beginning of the review that this film doesn't really have anything to say. 2020 was only 5 years ago, so that year is still fresh in our minds of all the events that happened. So every scene I'm like, yes, I know this, I know this, I know this. You don't need to keep repeating every scene that happened in 2020 and all the crazy shenanigans. But I feel like this film is instead for the future generation. It's not really made for people like us that know this event and lived through this event, but instead 10, 15 years down the line, it'll be for those that want to witness how crazy this year was, in a comedic tone. That's why I really do think this film is going to be one of the most important films of this decade, is because of how it's going to perfectly show off how insane 2020 was to our future generations and to our kids. I might be showing my kids this movie when they're a lot older. Of course, I'm not going to be showing them this when they're 12, but I'm going to be like, hey, want to know how crazy 2020 was? Watch this. So that's why I say this film is going to be a perfect time capsule of this year. It's going to be such an insane movie to look back on 15 years from now and see how well it holds up. I'm very looking forward to seeing how the conversation goes around this movie when everyone sees it, and what their take is on whether it's going to be a movie people are going to be remembering or not. So as a whole, I really did enjoy Eddington. I thought it was a very well executed movie that handled the subject matter of 2020 in a respectful manner, while also at the same time being a really fun comedic movie. Now, I don't think it's my favorite of Ari Aster's work. I do think Hereditary and Beau is Afraid are better, but I really did end up liking this movie a lot, though a little bit disappointed with its story and characters. But man, apparently Ari Aster is going to be making a sequel to this film, and I can't wait to see how that's going to turn out, because that's going to be even more insane than what happens in this. But until then, we'll have to wait and see. Which is why I'm going to give Eddington the gold top hat. To all my fans viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. But if it's your first time hearing like we've seen, be sure to subscribe for more content. And have you seen Eddington? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you have a fantastic night. And as always, stay fancy.